Hidden enemies. The home is an institution of God. God designed that the family circle, father, mother, and children should exist in this world as a form. Manuscript 36, 1899. This construction and this integration of family. Satan began his attack from Eden because the home is an institution of God. And the attack is succeeding. We can see the result, and it is the same in Korea. Many families in Korean society are facing destruction and disintegration. Young people avoid marriage according to the social trends and are reluctant to have children after marriage. The divorce rate of a couple who started with blessings from the relatives and friends is also reaching a high level. To make matters worse, more and more children are being hurt and abandoned as a result. Incidents against humanity such as murder, infidelity, violence, and discrimination are taking place within the family. In addition, the number of elderly people living alone without family care is increasing. Recognizing that the family is the unit of social construction and the foundation of the state, this phenomenon is serious crisis. Even within the Church of God, such family destruction is occurring without exception. The need for rebuilding of the family. Any attempt to destroy the family is a challenge to the order God has established. Satan is doing his best to destroy the family as well as the Sabbath. According to the worldly values, people downplay the holiness of marriage and are unable to escape from self-centeredness. As a result, marriage and divorce are viewed as human choices that having nothing to do with God. The movement of dismantling the family is accelerating even more in modern times. Single and living together one-parent families and an increasing in the number of the elderly living alone due to divorce and such phenomena. The appearance of the modern family away from the traditional conception of the family is changing into very diverse and serious form. Members of this disorganized family are moving away from even a church. A family crisis is also a church's crisis. The consequences of family destruction are not limited to single and cohabitation. Single parents families due to divorce and an increase in the number of elderly living alone. It is also manifested by indifference among family members, indifference to the church and members, and a decrease in trust. Sister White warns us as follows. The liberty taken in this age of corruption should be no criterion for Christ's followers. These fashionable exhibitions of familiarities should not exist among Christians pitting for the immorality. If lasciviousness, pollution, adultery, crime, and the murder are the order of the day among those who know not the truth and who refuse to be controlled by the principle of God's word, how important that the class professing to be followers of Christ, closely allied to God and angels, should show them a better and noble way. How important that by their chastity and virtue they stand in marked contrast to that class who are controlled by brute passions. The Testimony for the Church, Volume 2, 459. Beginnings of family rebuilding. The rebuilding of the family begins with the rebuilding of our relationship with Christ. The reason for using the word rebuilding instead of the word recovery is that it is not a simple recovery, but a strongly relationship that cannot be shaken. The rebuilding of the home and family is the approach of all families of the family to Christ. In other words, each member of the family must be personally united with Christ. The cause of division and discord in families and in the church is separation from Christ. To come near to Christ is to come near to one another. The secret of true unity in the church and the family is not diplomacy, not management, not a superhuman effort to overcome difficulties. Through there will be much of this to do, but union with Christ. Picture a large circle, from the edge of which are many lines all running to the center. The nearer these lines approach the center, the nearer they are to one another. Thus, it is in the Christian life. The closer we come to Christ, the nearer we shall be to one another. God is glorified as His people unite in harmonious action. Letter 49, 19, Paul. Man's greatest danger is in being self-deceived, indulging self-sufficiency, and thus separating from God, the source of His strength. Our natural tendencies, unless corrected by the Holy Spirit of God, have in them the seeds of moral death. Unless we become vitally connected with God, we cannot resist the unhallowed effect of self-indulgence, self-love, and temptation of the sin. The Ministry of Healing, 455. The hidden enemies of family rebuilding. COVID-19 is a virus. The virus is invisible, but it has changed a lot in the world in 2 years. Many loves once have been lost, and the economic damage is enormous. Even in the rebuilding of family, there are enemies who are hidden and obstruct without being seen. There is a word in the Bible that instructs us to be on the lookout for enemies that weigh and hide like a virus. For among my people are found wicked men. They lay wait as he that sets snares. They set a trap. They catch men. Jeremiah chapter 5 verse 26. Their tongue is as a narrow shutout. It speaks deceit. One speaks peaceably to his neighbor with his mouth, but in heart they lay his weight. Jeremiah chapter 9 verse 8. The invisible enemy hides and waits, eventually revealing the reality. It likes COVID-19, which goes through an incubation period of up to 2 weeks and then caused pneumonia symptoms, which threatens even life. The hidden enemy of family rebuilding is a virus that is more terrifying than a virus is like a spiritual virus. Just as worms eat away at a person's body, it makes a person's body and spirit very exhausted and makes it fundamentally impossible to rebuild a family. Complaints between family members. Christ teaches not to gossip. It means he says not to complain. Jesus therefore answered and said unto men, Murmur not among yourselves. John chapter 6 verse 43. More especially, Sister White said, many who profess together with Christ are scattering from him. This is why the church is so weak. Many indulge freely in criticism and accusing. By giving expression to suspicion, jealousy, and discontent, they yield themselves as instruments to Satan. The Christ Object Lesson 340. This principle also applies between family. When family grievances begin, direct dialogue is necessary to resolve them. But in some cases, it doesn't. The result of this do not appear so quickly. However, once the results are heard, it is difficult to recover. I want to tell you my experience. I had a very difficult relationship with my wife a long time ago. In fact, our family almost collapsed. The biggest mistake I made back then was that I didn't speak directly. If you talk through someone close to you, such as a friend, without speaking directly, you almost always fail. However, when we met in person and tried to understand each other's position, our problems were solved, and miraculously my wife chose the Remnant Church of God. Without any persuasion or teaching, my wife took up the Reform movement herself, and she is my biggest collaborator now. Amen. We should remember that with every word of complaints and nagging, our home are going into the grave. This obedience. The second individual enemy is disobedience. This is the most contagious invisible things. When we procrastinated on praying and having morning and evening service, it spread very quickly to the whole family. and someone of the family members break and disobey God-given principles, it spread incredibly quickly. We may find that our children disobey God's principle and teachings because of school and work. At this time, the family should clearly exhort them to obey even if it means death. Israel's experience of disobeying God's commands tells us. As the tribes of Benjamin did not drive out the Jebusite, the tribe of Manasseh, Ephraim, Zebulun, Asher, and Naphtali were contagious, and we can find in the Bible that they disobeyed God's command. And the children of Benjamin did not drive out the Jebusite that inhabited Jerusalem. But the Jebusite dwell with the children of Benjamin in Jerusalem unto these days. Judges chapter 1, verse 21. It should be clear to us that disobedience is the individual enemy of our choice. Even the youngest children must be taught by obey in order for the family to glorify God. Here are the words of prophet. We do not know what great interest may be at stake in the improving of God. There is no safety except in strict obedience to the word of God. All His promises are made upon condition of faith and obedience, and a failure to comply with His commands cuts off the fulfillment to us of the rich provisions of the scriptures. We should not follow impulse, nor rely on the judgment of men. We should look to the revealed will of God and working according His definite commandment, no matter what circumstance may surround us. God will take care of the result. Patriarchs and Prophet 618. Indifference. One of the family's greatest invisible enemies is indifference. We should take care of each other in the family. Even if there are problems in the family can be happy and can be restored only when they interested in each other. Give you ear and hear my voice, heart and hear my speech. Isaiah chapter 28 verse 23. We must realize the fear of indifference. The Bible tells us that David loved Absalom very much, and he had never had a crush on him. But David's indifference toward Absalom resulted in his son being disobedient, the greatest disgrace in the world, where son and father went to the war with the sword. We will have to consider how much influence interest can have. If I take an active interest, the blocked relationship will be resolved coolly. When I care and give love, the person will not spare himself for me. If you are interested, your soul can be healthy and your family can be rebuilt in a healthy and happy way. We must listen to our families, just as we must listen to God. In this way, you can be freed from indifference. For this reason, we should intentionally make time with our families and make sure we care for each other. Fathers should unbend from their false dignity, deny themselves some slight self-gratification in time and leisure, in order to mingle with the children, sympathizing with them in their little troubles, binding them to their hearts by the strong bonds of love, and establishing such an influence over his expanding minds that their counsel will be regarded as a sacred. Signs of Time, December 6, 1977. How to win the individual enemy? We all need to wake up. Just like wearing the mask to prevent COVID-19, we must be aware of the invisible, and we must be alert. The idea that my husband, my wife, and my children are to allow an invisible enemy to invade. Be sober. Be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walks about seeking whom he may devour. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. We must strive for the rebuilding of the family. Missionary work is important to us, but we need to spend more time and effort on our families. The principle of God should be studied at home with husband, wives, and children. Learning should be done at home, not just through church leaders at church. Family members should pray morning and evening, and from time to time, we should gather together to pray. The Lord has given us all the teachings from the rebuilding of the family. It is just that we are ignoring it. Perhaps it is more urgently needed for the whole family to gather together in the morning and evening to pray rather than a seminar, rather than a sermon. The prophet exhorts us to pray. The Holy One has given us rules for the guidance of all. These rules from the standard from which there can be no departure. The principles of holiness have yet to be learned daily, and then the will of God will not be paramount. In God you can stand. In God you can make aggressive warfare, presenting the truth as it is in Jesus. Make God your entire trust. Pray, 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 pray in faith. Trust then the keeping of your soul to God. He will keep that which is committed to Him against that day. Trust fully, unwaveringly in God. letter 126, 1895. The home is to be the place of greatest fighting power against Satan. Then the church will naturally stand firm. We must overcome the complaints, the disobedience, and indifference that now prevail in God's remnant church. Through this, order should be established in the home and family. The order of loving each other and putting God and the church first must be established from children to adults. God is displeased with disorder, slackness, and the lack of thoroughness in anyone. These deficiencies are serious evils and tend to win the affection of the husband from the wife. When the husband loves order, well-disciplined children, and a well-regulated house. A wife and mother cannot make home agreeable and happy unless she possesses a love for order, preserves her dignity, and has good government. Therefore, all who fail on this point should begin at once to educate themselves in this direction and cultivate the very things wherein is their greatest lack. Testimony for the Church, Volume 2, 298, 299. May God bless all of you. Amen.